Okay, today we're going to start our unit on factoring. And y'all have done this in Algebra 1, but a lot of y'all have forgotten. So we're going to start off pretty simple. Today all we're going to talk about is greatest common factor and how to take that out before you factor and do all the rest of that stuff. So we're going to start off really simple, only finding the greatest common factor and taking that out of the problem. And then later on this week, we'll start getting into factoring, the different ways to factor, and all that stuff. So today we're focusing just on greatest common factor. So look at number 1. You want to find the biggest number that'll go into all three numbers, or however many numbers there are, you want to find the biggest number that'll go into all of them. So 2, 18, and 4. Okay. I always start out with the smallest number and see if it goes into all three of them. So like my smallest number is 2. I'm going to see, can 2 go into all three? We can't have a number bigger than 2 because it can't go into 2, if that makes sense. So, like I said, I always start out with the smallest and kind of go from there. So can 2 go into 18? Yes, 9 times. Can 2 go into 4? Yes, twice. So my greatest common factor is 2. 2 will go into all three numbers. Now, you should have gotten calculator steps with your notes. So there is a way to have your calculator tell you what the greatest common factor is. And so I went ahead and wrote those steps down for you. So let's try it on number 2 with the calculator. And the thing about the calculator is you can only put in 2 numbers at a time. So even though we have 3 numbers, we can only put in 2. All right, so on my calculator steps, first thing I'm going to do is press math. Okay, math is under the alpha button. I'm going to press the right arrow to number at the top. I'm going to go down to number 9. It says GCD. It stands for greatest common denominator. And it's the same thing as greatest common factor. Okay, so you can either go down to 9 and press enter, or you can just press 9 and it'll go ahead and come up with GCD. Okay, I'm going to put in my first number. So on number 2, my first number is 6. Then I'm going to put a comma, and your comma button is right by your parentheses. So comma, and then my second number, which is 54. Okay, and then I'm going to press enter. So between those 2 numbers, my greatest common factor is 6. Now, I still have the 12 to account for. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my answer and I'm going to do the same thing I just did, but with 6 and 12, my third number. So instead of going through all of that again, what I can do is press second, enter, and it's going to bring up my last equation. And I can change my numbers from there. Okay? Or you can press math, right arrow, 9, and then punch it in. Okay, so 6 and 12. So my greatest common factor between 6 and 12 is 6. So out of all 3 numbers, my greatest common factor would be 6. That's the number that will go into all 3. Okay, so you can either, some people can look at it and say, okay, 6 goes into all 3, and they already know the answer. But if you don't know and you need some help, your calculator can do it for you. So I wanted to show you that. Look at number 3. On number 3, we have 13, 11, and 5. And we want to find a number that goes into all 3. So you can do the calculator way if you want. If you're doing it in your head and you're trying to figure out what numbers will go into all 3, there's not a number that'll go into 13, 11, and 5, right? So we say the greatest common factor is 1. because 1 is the only number that'll go into every single number ever. Okay, so if you don't have a greatest common factor, it is 1. 1 will always go into anything. All right, number 4, we want to find the greatest common factor between 4, 36, and 12. Okay, so I want you to take 1 minute, do it whichever way you want. Actually, let's do 30 seconds. You'll have 30 seconds to find your greatest common factor. Okay, so you should have gotten that the greatest common factor for 4, 36, and 12 is 4. Okay, and then it says on the next part, the first thing you want to look for when factoring an equation is the greatest common factor. No matter what method you end up choosing by the end of the week, this week, you're going to have to take out the greatest common factor first, no matter what. Okay, that's why we're spending all of today going over this, because it's important. Doesn't matter what method, you're going to have to take out the greatest common factor. All right, the next 3 equations, I know the numbering is off. It's because I took quite a few examples out. I figured y'all probably will get it pretty easy. On the next 3, this is what you're going to do on your worksheet. So, number 10, we have 7b squared minus 42v minus 49. What we want to do is see, do we have a greatest common factor between 7, 42, and 49? Don't worry about the negatives right now, okay? But between these 3 numbers, is there a greatest common factor? So if you can do it in your head, do it in your head. If you need to use the calculator to find the greatest common factor, you can do that too. But the greatest common factor here would be 7. Okay, so what we're going to do is take a 7 out of all 3 terms. Okay, so whenever I do that, whenever I take a 7 out, I'm going to divide each term by 7. Okay, so 7 divided by 7 on the first term gives me 1v squared. And you don't have to write the 1. It could be a sneaky one. On the second term, negative 42 divided by 7 is negative 6v. And negative 49 divided by 7 is negative 7. And this is where we're going to stop today. Tomorrow we'll go into how to factor what's in the parentheses. But for now we're just going to stop here, where we take out the greatest common factor, if there is one, and we leave it like that. Okay, so let's try 11. Okay, that second example, we have 4x squared plus 10. Okay, so ask yourself, do they have anything in common? Is there a number that'll go into both terms? And there is. 2 goes into 4 and 10. Okay, so we're going to take a 2 out of each term. So I'm going to put a 2 outside the parentheses. It's almost like distributing, but backwards. So whenever we distribute, we multiply. If we want to take a number out, we're going to do the opposite and divide. Okay. So if we take a 2 out of 4x squared, we divide by 2, we're left with 2x squared. Okay. If we take a 2 out of 10, 10 divided by 2 is 5. and I'm gonna leave it like that. All right, very last one. Let's see, 24r cubed plus 116r squared minus 168r. Okay, sometimes, like this problem, not only could they have a number in common, but do you see how they all three have an r? Okay, so for my greatest common factor, I'm going to take out an r. Okay, you want to take out as many r's as you can from all three terms. The reason we're only taking out one is because this last term, we can't take out more than one r because there's only one r there. Okay, so I can't take out an r squared because there's not enough to take here. Does that make sense? But you can take out, there may be some problems where you take out an r cubed because you can take an r cubed out of all three. But it has to be able to be taken out of every single term. Okay. Now, just by looking at 24, 116, and 168, a lot of y'all don't know what the greatest common factor is. Okay, and it's not a big deal. You can go to your calculator. You can either press second enter if you already have it in there, or you can go through and say math, right arrow, 9, and it'll come up with the GCD. Okay, so we want to find the greatest common factor in the first two numbers. Okay, so 24 and 116. Press enter, and it's 4. Okay, now I'm going to find the greatest common factor in 4, what I got here, and that last number, 168. Don't worry about the negative. It's actually going to mess it up if you do that. Okay, so we're going to put in 4 and 168. Okay, and 4 goes into both. It's not always going to work out that way where it's 4 for both, but you want to take that last answer that you get. That's the number that'll go into all three. Okay, so my greatest common factor for number 12 would be 4r. All right, and I'm going to take that out of every single term. So I'm going to write a 4r. Go ahead and write that first, because if you don't put it outside the parentheses, it is wrong. So go ahead and take out the 4r, and we're going to divide everything by that. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. If I have 3 r's and I take 1 out, I have 2 left, r squared. Okay. And if you remember your laws of exponents, when we're dividing, you want to subtract your exponents, right? So 3 minus 1 will give me 2. Okay, so you can think about it either way. 116 divided by 4 is going to give me 29. Okay, and for the r's, I had 2 r's. I'm taking 1 out, so I have 1 left. Okay, negative 168 divided by 4 gives me negative 42, and my r's will cancel out. All right, so this is what y'all are going to do today on your worksheet. You're going to do 1 through 20. And I want you to leave it like this. Take out your greatest common factor if it has one, and then leave your trinomial or polynomial, whatever it is. Go ahead and just leave it in parentheses. All right, and y'all have a good day.